Hello, Professor Saheb, members of the IPCC, and my colleagues. Today I present to you a proposal to address what are considered shortcomings of some of the most important and up-to-date assessments on the state of our climate. The shortcomings of the IPCC reports, specifically the summary for policymakers, are weak exposure and overuse of scientific jargon. As a result, the vital information that is hoarded by scientists and policymakers is rarely disseminated and understood by the general public. That said, I present Communication is Key, an IPCC education report to expand outreach. The presentation will follow the following format. I'll begin by outlining the report itself and purpose. Next, who is the target audience for the report? And finally, what does a successful report look like? Therefore, we come to the IPCC education report, key findings from the respective working group, with the key purpose to break barriers to entry. This report is a joint task between the IPCC Secretariat Communications and Media Relations team, a selection of authors, and climate activists. Additionally, breaking barriers to entry to climate knowledge by restricting heavy scientific jargon and instead synthesizing key findings by climate activists while being no more than 5 pages. And finally, grand dissemination of the report by climate activists in partnership with the IPCC Secretariat Communications and Media Relations team to local NGOs, social media, and reputable news organizations. Now, what is the timeline of this report? The onboarding process begins when the IPCC begins their expert review of the first draft. Between the first and second stage, the draft SBM is synthesized by climate activists with the aid and review of lead authors. The final draft, with edits from the second order draft, will be at the same time as the final draft report and SPM. There's a final scientific review followed by approval and acceptance of the report, which is then published alongside the SPM. Now, who is the target audience? It is more often than not that people want to engage with climate science but face too many barriers to entry as a result of the reports being unreadable. Therefore, this report is for those of any age and educational background from all around the world who care about the state of our climate but cannot afford hours to break down the jargon or specifically seek out the report. And after all that's been said, what is considered a successful report? By taking advantage of the platform that climate activists and Indigenous leaders have, the education report will catalyze exposure and education, encouraging engagement with the report and hopefully motivating a shift in behavior. Access to information is greater on social media than ever before, and it is time the IPCC takes advantage of these platforms in the midst of the climate crisis. Through these critical education points, global citizens will find motivation to make critical changes to lifestyle habits in favor of being more sustainable. People do care, but the first step to unlocking a more collective understanding of the crisis is education. This report can be the first step. Thank you for listening.
Created using Powtoon.